Good morning. One more time. Let's go ahead and get started. Hey, not bad, right? I like to start on time when we can. Welcome. Welcome, everyone. Please go ahead and take a seat. So you can't, is this better? Okay. If I knock the podium off, you let me know, right? Okay. Welcome to San Francisco Caregiver Conversation, a day of learning, support, and information exchange. We're glad you're here. Whoops, I can't move, really. And welcome to those of you who are joining us on simulcast. We have a few folks that are joining us in the digital world. We named today's event Caregiver Conversation to reflect the importance of hearing from you, from those of you that are spouses, adult children, relatives, friends, partners, concerned neighbors, who are extending a hand, and sometimes 2 or 3 hands, to help care for somebody who's living with a chronic disabling health condition. Our goal today is to listen to you, to learn from you, and to incorporate what we learned today to help San Francisco become an even better place for caregivers to live and to work. I'm Leah Eskenazi with Family Caregiver Alliance, and I join you today in knowing that it takes a community, doesn't it, to support family caregivers and to make that support accessible to everybody. My family learned this firsthand. In the early 1940s, my grandparents settled into a house in the Sunset District on 30th between Pacheco and Ortega, if anybody's from that area. English wasn't their first language. They spoke Ladino, which was a mixture of Turkish, Spanish, and Hebrew. And they didn't know anybody. They were isolated. But as their English improved and as they got to know their neighbors and the local shopkeepers, they started to develop some friendships. But it wasn't more than, well, it was really the mid-1950s that my grandfather started to develop some memory loss. And he, being a very stubborn, determined man, was not going to be deterred from taking his regular walks around the neighborhood, right? You know that story. So he would take off, but sometimes he had a hard time finding his way home. So most fortunately, we had helpful neighbors, helpful grocery store staff, helpful community police, and sometimes complete strangers who would find my grandfather and who would see the note that my grandmother stuck in his breast pocket of his sports coat when everybody used to wear sports coats, and they would help guide him home. So it helped keep my grandfather safe, and it helped keep my grandmother with some peace of mind. And it just makes it possible when you have a community to care for somebody at home, when you have that kind of network. Oh, sure. Okay. Sorry, station identification. There's a Toyota RAV4 silver, 84JJ308. I think that's what or 8YJJ308. And what's the issue?
The windows are open.
Closed for safety. The windows are open, and we suggest you close them for safety. Thank you. All right. So it took a community then to help keep my grandparents safe and my grandmother having some peace of mind, as I mentioned. And it takes a community today in San Francisco to rally around family and friend caregivers to make it possible to care for a loved one at home, as I mentioned. Today in San Francisco, we are so fortunate. There is an exceptional group of community service providers who care about family caregivers and the people who receive their care. A select group of these providers have partnered with Family Caregiver Alliance today for this event. But I want to note that there are even more providers in our community who are also providing important services and support. And to those providers who are here today, I want to invite you, if you didn't have a table designated to you, these 2 tables right in the front here, you're welcome to put your materials there so caregivers can find that material and learn about your services. Our partners for the event today are listed in your program, and I'd like to recognize them now. If you just kind of wave your hand, that would be great. Alzheimer's Association, Benson Zhao, and there's Benson, thank you. Rachel Main couldn't make it today. Family Caregiver Alliance, Christina Irving, the Institute on Aging, Allison Moritz, Jewish Family and Children's Services, Tracy DeBrum-Ravova, Kimochi Inc., Sean O'Connell, Open House, Ephraim Getahun, San Francisco Campus for Jewish Living, Christine Ropel, yay! San Francisco Department of Disability and Aging Services, Kelly Dearman, thank you. Self-Help for the Elderly, Emily Chum, yay! I'm seeing waves. You may not be seeing the waves, but I'm seeing the waves. Stepping Stone Adult Day Healthcare, Dan Gallagher, there we go. And University of California, San Francisco Memory and Aging Clinic, Gloria Aguirre. Great. Thank you to our partners. Yes. Yay, partners. Be sure to visit their information tables. I'm sorry about this back noise. And also be sure to take some time to mingle with the other caregivers in the room, with the providers in the room, so that you'll get a chance to exchange information and get to know each other. We hope that you'll take I want to just state, today would not be possible without the generous support from San Francisco's Meta Fund, who provided the funding for this event and supported lunch. I'm seeing some faces. Are you getting some different, okay. And also supported lunch. Many thanks also to the San Francisco Campus for Jewish Living for hosting our breakfast. And to the Stupsky Foundation for supporting today's wellness activities. I would be remiss if I didn't give a shout out to Monique Parrish. Monique, raise your hand, my co-coordinator for this event, who is a talented convener and brought superior organization, focused energy to our day to help make it possible. Thank you, Monique. Finally, there's just a couple of housekeeping items. The goodie bags that family caregivers received when you checked in, they have a fun array of different things. They're not all the same. If you find something in your goodie bag that you don't think you're gonna, if you can use it, wonderful, use it. But if you find something that you don't think you're gonna be able to use, please don't hesitate to give it to somebody else here or to a family or friend in the community. And then finally, the bathrooms are in the lobby, on both ends of the lobby. There's a water dispenser table if you get thirsty at all. If you need a break from sitting, please don't hesitate to just stand up and go to the side or the back whenever that, to make yourself feel more comfortable. This is a no smoking building. I think they'd actually like you to go out to the street if you need to smoke. And if your cell phones are on, if you could either put them on silent or just turn the sound down, that would be fabulous. I think with that, I would like to, it's my sincere pleasure to introduce We Are One. Will you please join me up here on the podium? The faith leader group from Japantown and Western Addition, who will be leading us in a non-denominational blessing for the day. Reverend Dr. James McCrae, Sensei Masato Kawahatsu, and Sensei Elaine Donlin. Please.
The grace and peace of our Lord and our Savior be with you and with your spirits. We gather about midway through what in the Christian tradition is the season of Pentecost. We celebrate the outpouring of the Creator's Spirit, creating community, and then working through the relationships within the community to create, to make things new, to bring forth a new heaven and a new earth. Let us begin this celebration with an invoking of this sweet, sweet Spirit. Spirit of the living God, fall afresh on us. Melt us, mold us, make us, fit us for this moment, that through the time of communication and sharing, we would be one in the making of the community, that we may care for and nurture one another. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Everybody stretch and smile. Aha, and laugh. Aha, ha, ha, ha. Aha, ha, ha. Thank you. My name is Reverend Masato Kawazu, Sensei, Laughter Sensei. Make everyone laugh. Every morning I do a laughter exercise in Japantown. So if you're interested, come down. 8 a.m. every day. So I'm minister of a Concord Church of San Francisco. They located on the Bush, 1909 Bush. And I am represent the We Are One group. It started about 1.5 years ago. Community from the Western Addition Fillmore African American faith communities and the ministers from the San Francisco, Japantown, and Chinese American from the Chinatown community, and the others get together to do activities for the betterment of San Francisco and the world. So far we had the 4 events through dialogues, prayer, and sharing our experience. We have learned so much and developed a great understanding and appreciation of each other. Our 5th event will be this Saturday at the Hamilton Recreation Center from 12 noon to 2:30. It will be a center, children and safety, but not only children, senior adult also. In the Concord faith tradition, we clap hands 4 times before a blessing. This symbolizes working together between the universe and us, between parents and children, and people and provider care and people who offer care. Please join together with 4 solemn clap, or just put hands together. Okay, let's clap hands 4 times. Thank you. Open your heart. Let us pray. Thank you for all blessing of heaven and earth. Our universe parents, the source of origin of our life. We express our wholehearted appreciation for giving us priceless life in the past, present, and the future. Today we gather here to support the many caregivers and organizations that support the important works of these special people. Through conversation, sharing, and learning, may we all feel supported in this important work and exchange valuable information and resources. Please give us your power, your love, so that we will be able to take care of our family, elders, patients, community, and ourselves. ありがとうございます。Japanese, ありがとうございます. Everybody know that means thank you. Thank you for everything. 1,000 times a day. Why 1,000 times a day? Because no time to complain. 1,000 times. All right? Okay, お世話になります。Japanese, which means I appreciate you for taking care of me. Yeah, andおめでとうございます, which means congratulations for happy new days every day. Every day wake up, おめでとうございます. Today, happy new days. Everybody say each other, おめでとうございます. Happy new day. Clap hands 4 times together. Thank you.
Thank you, senseis. My name is Elaine Donlin. I'm a minister at the Buddhist Church of San Francisco, and I'm honored to be here with you today. Compassion is a significant concept in Buddhism, and it's taught that compassion begins with ourselves, that if we don't have compassion for ourselves, then our compassion for others is incomplete. As caregivers, the challenge is often finding the balance between opening one's heart endlessly and accepting the limits of what one can do. So let us anchor ourselves in this preciously unrepeatable moment by simply breathing in and breathing out to the following caregivers' contemplation. May I offer my care and presence unconditionally, knowing it may be met by gratitude, indifference, anger, or anguish. May I offer love, knowing I cannot control the course of life, suffering, or death. May I find the inner resources to truly be able to give. May I remain in peace and let go of expectations. May my caring experience help me to open to the true nature of life. And may I see my own limits with compassion. May I and all beings live in peace, live with ease, and die with ease. May we balance love for ourselves and others, and balance compassion with equanimity. Thank you.
Thank you. What a good centering way to start our day. Now I'd like to welcome Supervisor Connie Chan, San Francisco District Number 1, to come and to the podium. Supervisor Chan, you'll find more about her in the speaker section of your program, but please know that she is a tireless advocate for families and older adults. Supervisor Chan? There you are.
Good morning, 早晨. It is so good to be with you here today. And to start off, I want to share why family caregivers are so meaningful to me, but even more so now. And it's a personal story. It's from a personal perspective. About a year ago, actually a little bit more than a year ago, for those of you may or may not know my mom, her name is Irene Tam, and she worked for Unlock for a very, very long time. She lived in Chinatown ever since we came to San Francisco when I was 13 years old. And that's the community that she lived in and served. She worked on the Unlock sites on Powell. She loved her job. And it's because she was working with seniors, caring for them and their families, and help and support the families to make sure that their elders are well taken care of. So for all these years, she has been given to her, she gave to her community. She was caring for many, many elders and their families for a long time. And then a year ago, or a little bit more than a year ago, I clearly remember it was the Friday before Mother's Day. And and all of you may probably remember, we were still in pandemic. And so she and my brother and we got on Zoom. And she broke the news that she was found with pancreatic cancer. We weren't sure, what stage it was, but my mom was like, let's prepare ourselves, and of course my brother and I were like, Mom, like this, who knows? Like, have you done this testing yet? Have you done that yet? And she was like, not yet, but I just want to share with you. Within that 3 weeks, though, it was such a blur for me. And my brother, he was living in Oregon, in Portland at that time. He decided that he's going to bring my 2 nephews and his wife, all of them, to my home, and so that we can be together and try to care for my mom. But we are all still working. I was at that time already a sitting supervisor and trying to, brand new supervisors. I was, new on my job and trying to do this job as a supervisor, a policymaker during pandemic in San Francisco, trying to get our constituents vaccinated. My brother, as a computer engineer, worked for Intel at that time, and trying to work remote, and we also trying to get our kids like on Zoom and go to school on Zoom, and trying to figure out how to care for the best care for our mom at that moment. And I have to tell you, they say sometimes that it takes a village to raise a child. I say it takes a village to care for our family members who are sick. It really did for me. We found out my mom had terminal cancer, stage 4, and her friends came. Her medical team came together. Her colleagues came together. My colleagues came together. My team, the people that I work with, including Angelina, you in the back, all came together to support all of us, my brother, my families, to make sure that we have that flexibility to put my mom first, to prioritize her care. But it wasn't easy, and it got me thinking, how do you do this day in and day out? At that time, we were like, how long is this gonna last? And you want it to last, because that means my mom was still to be around. But it lasted 3 weeks. She passed away in her own home that she lived in for 3 decades, and peacefully with her family and her grandchildren all around her. And for that, I was grateful. But it was not easy. It was not easy because that moment, that one precious moment, took a village of people that came together. And I believe that is what this event is about, to make sure that we hold that village together. We make sure that people gather and to share their experience and provide the supports for one another, be it friends, be it colleagues, and be it all these organizations around you today. But also that's important, though, from my experience, that you as an individual family caregiver also have to reach out and ask for that support. There were moments that I have to say, there were days where I'm like, I am the supervisor, I'm supposed to take care of everybody, I'm the mom, I am the big sister, I am the daughter, that I'm supposed to do all of that and take care of everyone myself. You got to leave that space to allow other people to come, because to help you, to take care of you, so that you can provide better care. And I think that it's important. And with that experience, though, I also recognize this one thing. that is the reason that I end up having this legislation that came forward. It's called Family Workplace Ordinance, Family-Friendly Workplace Ordinance. And this ordinance allows people to actually have flexible work schedule to take care of their family members, be it someone who's sick or be it their kids, whoever that is to them. And it doesn't have to be their parent, it could be their siblings, relative, or family friend that they live with, or not live with, but just show that this is someone that I have to care for, so that they actually have the flexible work schedule to go on and take care of their families. And because I know that if it wasn't because of the people that I work with, especially my team, that really stepped in and support and allow me that flexibility, and I recount those 3 weeks and thinking about all the moment from the moment that I woke up to the moment that I went to sleep, I was grateful for any moment, any second that I spent with my mom. And even though there were moments that were just silence, the silence of me sitting next to her, and she was not the most responsive, but I'm still grateful for those moments. So that is how I know every moment counts, and that if people can actually have a flexible work schedule to take the moment out of that work and thinking about their family, caring for their family, and just simply be with their family is really critical. So thank you for all your service, and thank you for all your work. Please take the time to care for yourself and each other. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Chan. I would like to invite, get my notes here all in order. I'd like to welcome Lorenzo Rosas to come up. Is that okay if I roll your R? Is that all right? Lorenzo is the district representative for Senator Stott Weiner, a wonderful advocate in San Francisco for important issues such as affordable housing, LGBTQ plus rights, and other diverse community members. So please, Lorenzo.
Hello. Thank you so much to Leah and Monique for having me here and being here to represent the senator. As Leah mentioned, I'm a district representative with Senator Scott Weiner. He sends his remarks and wishes he could be here. Unfortunately, he's taken with the legislative calendar right now. Here, let me fix this properly. But I'm especially honored to be here speaking to you all. And the Family Caregiver Alliance, especially because the organizing work and providing of services done by this organization and the many partners here speaks to the unending commitment of family caregivers to those that they care for and the best aspects of San Francisco and our society. When an individual does not neatly fit into health institutions, it's the incredible, awe-inspiring work of you all to hold up the fabric of society, to make sure that these people are cared for, and that your commitment is fulfilled. I wanted to start my remarks first and foremost thanking you for all the work and recognizing your tireless commitment to those that you care for and the unending commitment to those and making sure that their quality of life is better. Coming from a young family, I was extremely lucky to be raised by my great-grandmother, my Nana, who was an amazing woman and bought our first family house through divorce and became the matriarch of my family for generations to come. She quit her longtime job as the school cafeteria for the high school where my tias attended in Los Angeles to be able to drive me to school every year until the last year she had her license. And in many respects, I am the man who I am, and very much say the one-liners to myself of lazy people work twice as hard, or for example, because of my Nana. The flip side of being from a young family means that you see firsthand the effects of aging on the generations that came before you. In my early adulthood and my young teenage years, my great-grandmother, my Nana, was diagnosed with Alzheimer's and slowly but surely lost her memory. What originally went from her asking the same questions after an hour or so generally went to an inability to recognize family. And now I know she knows who I am when she looks at me and she smiles and gives me a nod, but little else. Following the initial diagnosis, it quickly became clear Nana needed assistance. She needed a caregiver with her. She could not live alone as she had for decades before that. And I'd say it's lucky that we have a large family to take care of her, but that really is the fruit of the sacrifices and love that she set forth in the generations that she sacrificed for. So we all chipped in, taking turns to be present for her mentally, while cautiously watching her every move. And it was really hard. It was hard for all of us. And it just took a lot from every single person to chip into the family, and I think Supervisor Chan correctly mentioned it took a village. The situation for us became untenable when several family members were diagnosed with cancer, and ultimately meant that they couldn't be there in the caregiving role. And we needed professional services, and we're privileged enough to find care at a home very close to my grandmother, who fortunately survived her bout with cancer. With access to greater care and professional supervision, I can happily say my great-grandmother, my Nana, is still alive and very well. She watches her soap operas every day. General Hospital is her favorite. I share this story really to show personally how much I'm invested in this community, and to add to the message that so many here will convey, such as Supervisor Chan and many after me. Caregiving is one of, if not the most laborious and often tasking roles and responsibilities you can take, born from great love and deep compassion and empathy. And to the work done by FCA and the many partners here is life-changing for those who need the support, training, and resources, and those who receive the care that is enriched by these resources provided. I'm happy to say I'm here standing to represent a senator who understands these 2 points and fights to be a champion for this community and for the caregivers and the people who you care for. The senator supports legislation such as AB 1502 to reform badly operated nursing homes, but also in addition to affirming the Senate's commitment to expanding Social Security benefits. Beyond legislation, he's been a budget champion for several elder-related issues, such as the California's Commission on Aging, new funding of a state position on geriatric let me make sure I get this name, geriatric behavioral health leadership, which is basically the chief executive in charge of making sure older adult mental health related issues are taken care of. But beyond that, of course, the welfare of caregivers and those that they care for, those that you all care for, revolves around access to affordable housing, paid family leave, and access to quality health care. All issues that I'm happy to say and proud to say that I work for a senator who continues to fight for in legislation, in budget, and in advocacy in the community. So once again, I'm just gonna say I'm extremely honored to be here. Thank you for allowing me to share my story, but most importantly, thank you all for the work that you do. It truly is holding up the fabric of society by caring for those who don't neatly fit into health institutions. And so thank you, and we are in debt to you for the care that you give. Thank you.
Oops. Thank you, Lorenzo. We have to fight with these masks, don't we? When you put them on, when you take them off, it's a challenge. All right, thank you so much. Now, it's my great pleasure to introduce Kathy Kelly, who's Executive Director of Family Caregiver Alliance. Kathy's dedicated to improving the health and well-being of family, friend, and partner caregivers and for the people who receive their care. She works locally, statewide, and nationally as an expert consultant and hands-on innovator. Please read more about Kathy in the speaker section of your program. Kathy?
Okay. I have to admit this is the first time, at least for events that we've done, that I've been actually in person seeing everybody. And after a few years of seeing everybody on Zoom meetings and masked and unmasked, sometimes I have a hard time recognizing some of you. So if I seem a little preoccupied, it might just be that we're all trying to get back to some semblance of normal in our lives. Well, good morning, and I'm really pleased to welcome you this morning. And I want to say these caregiver convenings for us have been such a joy to put together. This is actually the third convening that we've done. We are a regional program for our services. We work on the state and national level as well. And we've done convenings in Contra Costa County and Alameda. I've done a paper on this for Santa Clara County many years ago. And I was thrilled when we were going to do this kind of event in San Francisco. I live in San Francisco. I'm a native Californian raised in the East Bay. I love the city. And I have to tell you, from somebody who has the perspective of seeing states and regions and other counties, San Francisco is a very good place to be in. San Francisco just rocks, what can I say? So I want to do a little opening exercise, and I can probably tell that everyone's going to raise their hand at some point. And I have 3 questions, and I want you to raise your hand. And if the next question is, you want to raise your hand, you keep your hand raised. So you can raise them more than once, in other words. Raise your hand if you are currently a caregiver. Oh, everybody. Raise your hand if you were previously a caregiver. Still more. Raise your hand if you expect to be a caregiver. Yeah. It's a ubiquitous experience, isn't it? Rosalind Carter said it first, and she said it best. There are only 4 kinds of people in the world: those who have been caregivers, those who are currently caregivers, those who will be caregivers, and those who will need to be caregivers. I want to say that Mrs. Carter, she's been a champion for decades for many, many issues that were not particularly popular. 2 of these were particularly close to her heart. One was on mental health issues, and the other one was on family caregiving. So I've had the privilege to meet and work with Mrs. Carter on family caregiving issues through the years. And I wonder if I can ask a favor of all of you this morning. And that is, today happens to be Mrs. Carter's 95th birthday. And so we got the message. Al, I want you to come up. And I think standing up here would get a better picture. I want to take a picture of all of you and sent it to her for her birthday wishes. And that we were contacted by staff at the Carter Center, reminding us that it was Mrs. Carter's birthday today. And I was going through my notes, and I realized we're having the best event for Mrs. Carter to be acknowledged at, and we should take advantage of it, because she has been one tireless lady on this issue. So if I could ask you all to just give a wave, I'm going to send this to her. I'll take a picture too. Oh, that's even better. Go for it. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, Mrs. Carter. Happy birthday to you. Oh. That is lovely. I'm sure she's going to be thrilled about this. I just have to say one thing about Mrs. Carter. I've oftentimes had to go to meetings that are in DC during the summer. And that's not the particularly best time of year for DC, because it's very hot and humid. And coming from San Francisco, I don't know, for me, I just don't do hot and humid very well. And I always feel like I'm just sort of sweaty and disheveled. And I remember I was feeling that way, and I remember watching Mrs. Carter come in with a beautiful outfit on, not a sweat drop to be seen, very calm and collected. And I thought, I want to be you. Please, can I be you? Anyway, We're asked to talk about personal caregiver stories, to really think about, our own personal experiences and how this comes out in terms of our daily work, and for those of us who are in services or advocacy, how it manifests itself in that way, and we saw some examples earlier. I'm going to tell you about my personal my caregiver story through a journey that I experienced through Family Caregiver Alliance, because I was one of the original employees for the organization starting 40 years ago. So the history started here in San Francisco. I don't know what it is, it's baked into the water here to be innovative. And that was when Art Agnos, who later became mayor, was in the assembly. And he got the attention of a needs assessment that was done before my time, and on family caregivers. It was really one of the first needs assessments. This is 1979. And he wanted to introduce a bill from the recommendations from those reports. Now, I'm sort of a cynic at this point. I think nothing ever comes of reports, but somebody read that recommendation and took action, so that was pretty thrilling. So the task force that pulled together that report actually led to became eventually Family Caregiver Alliance and Incorporated in 1980. So they pulled together the ideas and language, and that our San Francisco Assemblyman introduced the first legislation in the country that recognized unpaid family caregivers, their contributions, your contributions and special needs for services and supports, and a pilot project to test those services. And the target group for that was those that were caring for adults with cognitive impairments that were caused by Alzheimer's or related dementias, although it wasn't called that at the time, stroke, Parkinson's, head injury, and to lift restrictions so we could actually serve the missing middle. In other words, it was everybody. Everybody was included in this bill. So we ended up developing the pilot. At that time, there were no programs. There was no service models, there was no informational material, but we had a cadre of very dedicated doctors and nurses and social workers, attorneys, rehab specialists, family caregivers that are all part of trying to collect what we could collect and deliver a model of services that everyone shaped that pilot project. I have to say I came on during this particular period right when the legislation was getting passed, and I would say that there is a definite advantage to youth in this regard. When you're young, you really can't see how tall that mountain is to move that rock up the mountain, that boulder up the mountain. So there is an advantage to being young and dumb. You don't know what the obstacles are, so you just plow ahead, right? And so that's what we did, plowed ahead. Sometimes when I tell this story, I go, we were just making stuff up. Now, it wasn't quite that, but truthfully, there was no programs, no touchstones going on. When you're talking about 1980, nobody knew what a family caregiver was. So we administered the program. We started getting calls from all over the state, all over the country. Just people were desperate, for this type of information. And he came back in '84 and said, "We're going to replicate this, and it should be statewide." Okay, so that bill passed, and the caregiver resource centers, there's 11 that now serve regionally. Every single county, all 58 counties in the state, was created. We were then again involved in the creation and the codification of that type of the program, with defining the services. By that time, we had learned a few things along the road, so we actually could put together an operations manual, and to really further those efforts statewide. And so recently, the CRCs took yet another turn. We were involved in the development of these efforts statewide as well, because we are one of the caregiver resource centers for the Bay Area, but we had moved ahead to develop a HIPAA-compliant interactive client record called CareNav, and knew that the future was going to rest in a combination of hybrid services, some of those being delivered digitally, particularly when we have a lot of working caregivers in our midst, and those that can be delivered in person, obviously. And based on that, and based on the fact that we really need to move ahead with being able to gather the information, the data necessary to make those kinds of changes in policy and practice, we received $30 million in an augmentation to do just that across the state. And that was passed with a lot of work on the part of family caregivers at the community level, talking to their own legislators. So we moved ahead on that level. So there's a lot of firsts in the state, but I'm going to say not for San Francisco. I always say there's something here in the DNA of this particular city that brings people together. I just want to call out that, Onlock and Chinese Hospital, really developed the PACE model, which was taken nationally, is seen as a model of care. We wish we had more of them across the state and across the country. The AIDS crisis responded with many, many types of services and paved the way for the recognition in services like open house and other growing LGBTQ services and senior housing. So there's many others that I don't have time to mention, but I want to say that San Francisco has always been innovative, has always had compassion, and really oftentimes puts their money, where the direction of the needs are in the community. And I say this because I, work with a lot of communities across the country, and San Francisco clearly is really quite a leader. As you can see, we all have broad working relationships with the community providers. I want to shout out to all of the agencies that helped put this together and those that are here today to distribute materials and so on. I also want to give a shout out to the Department of Aging and Adult Services, DOS, for their leadership during COVID. Now, I just want to acknowledge that it wasn't the first week that we shut down in mid-March, but it clearly was the second or so. It was very early. DOS got every provider in the aging network on a conference call to connect us with the latest information, with what was coming out from the Department of Public Health, health services, transportation. In other words, when you're in a chaotic situation, information is gold. And they made that happen by a simple conference call and one person that they could contact, that we all could contact if we had any kind of question. They didn't know all the answers. We didn't expect them to, but they would go and find the answers. And as somebody who took advantage of that, I can tell you it clearly worked. My observation is, again, San Francisco led the way. And every once in a while, my husband and I go, oh, should we move somewhere else, when we retire? No. No, I'm not going to. We have a lot of great things. And also the Dignity Fund, which every other county around the Bay Area envies that we have the Dignity Fund that was passed by San Francisco voters for improved social services and to support seniors, adults with disability, and family caregivers. This too is extraordinary for the Bay Area region, and others are looking at this as a model. So what's the point of this history lesson for all of us? I think San Francisco has the knowledge and experience and the abilities to take on additional improvements and innovations and to keep moving forward on behalf of services and supports for family caregivers. Can the city and the county take on all of the knotty issues that we're talking about? Many of these issues, in particular for funding for families that don't qualify for Medi-Cal or do not have veteran status, and particularly those that are in the missing middle, is likely beyond the capacity of just one county. But many things can improve the lives of family caregivers can be done here locally. But to really, to be done locally, but to really solve this issue for the missing middle means that we need to shift systems of care, healthcare, social care, housing, transportation, towards reimbursement to support community-based services for all families that have broader income ranges. That, to me, is the real heart of the matter, at least at this point in my evolution and development. On a larger note, because we do work a little bit broader than just the local, our heart's in San Francisco, but we also have work that extends beyond. We have recently moved the CRC system from Department of Healthcare Services, where if you know the Department of Healthcare Services, it's a huge agency. I say our budget was like budget dust there. It's a rounding error, basically. But we're now under the Department of California Department of on Aging, and we're working hopefully to bring a more focused lens to caregiving issues and the integration of caregivers, within all of their different systems. And because we have a fairly data-rich component, we want to make sure that the Master Plan on Aging, which is making rational decisions about how services are arrayed in the state, to make sure that they pay attention to that data and in their data dashboard and how we make decisions about resource allocation. The final thing I'll tell you is that we have started and launched, a family caregiver coalition as well in the state. So we'll be keeping you posted on that. Onto the state report, we're really excited to have this. I think there's a copy that you all got. And it really is an amalgam of interviews with families and interviews with providers, our data that we did in surveys, just taking a pulse of what is available in San Francisco. And likely many of you participated in this, and we thank you. I just want to say the key demographics, for looking at what our data in particular is that we have a very diverse population, obviously. 60% of the caregivers are adult children. This is pretty common. Of those who reached out for help, it was 75% female. And I tell you that because that number really hasn't changed in 40 years. And 47% are employed full or part-time. There's a lot of juggling that's going on in our community. And over 2/3 of the individuals needing assistance are living with the caregiver. So the size of the problem is quite large. We projected or estimated that there are 90,000 caregivers in the county of San Francisco, 90,000. And the estimated economic value of what all of you do every single day is around $1 billion. Think about that for a moment. We have talked about the value in terms of relationships and commitment and community. I'm just going to take a minute to talk about value in another way, and that is, of all of the stakeholders that are sitting here in the room, professionals and policymakers and providers and caregivers, really the most important stakeholder in the room are you, the family caregiver. Without you, things would come to a grinding halt. So sometimes I think, what would happen if all of the families went on strike? What would happen? It would be pandemonium at the disco time. I mean, things would come to a grinding halt. Now, I'm not suggesting that you would or should go on strike. I'm suggesting that there is another value to consider, and that is you, the family caregivers, are the long-term care workforce in our entire system. your contributions and economic value dwarfs many times over all public expenditures for care, healthcare, social care, whatever. I mean, you beat Walmart. It's $470 billion across the country, truly. And I say this because there is a value to economics. You have to know your value, and part of that is that you contribute not only to your family, because, all of the things that we know about, but you contribute mightily to the support of the healthcare system and the social care system in our country. And I think that value really has meaning to it, and we should pay more attention to it. I know we're a little nervous about talking about money in quite this way, but you have real economic power. And I'm hoping at this point that, the hidden workforce, we're saying this every day up in Sacramento, in Congress, and the cities and the counties, we're saying this every day. Without family caregivers, we wouldn't work as a larger society, just general. We know that, all of you are caring for a long time. We talk to families along the continuum. Who we talk to most is when the care gets really difficult and personal, families reach out to us. Everybody needs something at any place along the continuum, that's to be sure. At the beginning, you might need information, some planning advice, some things to watch out for, some things to keep in consideration. But when care gets really hands-on, that's when families call us. And I think that if we were, thinking about how we, I don't know, you say prioritize, but where we need to go to is really understand what those complex care issues and really start to think about how we address those. Because at some points, people don't need so much assistance. They need some, but not a lot. But when they need a lot, it's really, really burdensome. And this is particularly true for those that do not qualify for other publicly funded services, that lower income missing middle that we keep talking about. So we've nibbled around the edges about that with the Dignity Fund and others, but on a broader scale, because I'm also a policy person, we really need to take a big chunk, a big bite out of the budgets that will support more families in the future. So one of the other things that came out loud and clear in this report was the issue of equity and access to services across all diverse communities in the city. And we should be and will be, making sure that we do a better job of that, I think, collectively across all of the programs. And individually for us, because we are a diverse city, it's a core value that services take on. The report itself is to ensure diverse communities have access to family, these are the recommendations, by the way, have access to caregiver support services that are culturally and linguistically appropriate, second one is to advocate for and provide an array of quality-driven, affordable, community-based services for all caregivers, especially for working caregivers. Remember, half of the caregivers are employed, who typically require full-day services to maintain employment. Third, to increase caregiver access to adult day and respite programs, which really do actually offer some opportunities, particularly for working caregivers with extended hours. And fourth, to identify and integrate family caregivers into health and social service systems to equip them with easily accessible and relevant information, education, training, and support specific to their situation. So those are the 4 takeaways from the report. I urge you to take a look. It's mercifully short, and it tells a lot about the progress that we've made to date in the city, and also gives some recommendations for how we can continue that arc of making progress in the future. So I thank you for attending today, and I look forward to working on making San Francisco an even better place for all of us to age and thrive.
Thank you very much, Kathy. That's a good overview to start with. Now I'd like to give you a 15-minute break. Yay! If you need to use the restroom, you want to get the breakfast items will be taken away after this, so please get your last bits of coffee or orange juice. And we'll see you back at right about 11, no, sorry. Oh, are we? No. Yeah, because then we're going to set up, if you don't mind.
No, I don't mind.
Then we can set up, okay.
It was we're just gonna get up and stuff. That's all right.
So Bobby was going to help us with, just a minute.